Aloha and mahalo for tuning in to Transform Hawaii Government's Digital Talk Story, where I will be talking with our local government leaders and discussing the great work they are doing to modernize our state's programs and services. My name is Christine Sakuda, and I am the Executive Director of Transform Hawaii Government. Today on the call, it's my pleasure to be talking story with Kalani Kaanaana, Chief Brand Officer with Hawaii Tourism Authority. Welcome, Kalani.
Aloha, thanks so much for having me, Christine.
Well, let's jump right into it. First of all, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and how technology impacts your daily life?
Sure. I'm a newly appointed Chief Brand Officer for the Hawaii Tourism Authority, like you said, but I'm a Kailua boy at heart, born and raised, Kailua High School grad. So super blessed to be working on quite arguably one of the biggest tourism brands that the world has, called the Hawaiian Islands, and that's our home. And so for me, I think our work involves a lot of technology, whether it's some of the more technical aspects of marketing and the tools that we have to leverage in that endeavor, but also some of the other tools that I think we'll talk a little bit about today that help us manage tourism impacts on our home. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Great, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And, you know, I agree with you. Your office probably has the most challenging job around the world of trying to market Hawaii in a Pono way, in the right way. And Hawaii is just loved by all around the world. So how best can we do that moving forward? So thank you. And I look forward to continuing this conversation. And talking earlier before the call that oftentimes there is so much great work that's going on in government. And sometimes government just doesn't have the opportunity to share its innovation projects, the cool things that are going on, especially coming out of the pandemic, of how have you used technology in an innovative way to reach out to your customers, to the citizens of Hawaii, and to our guests coming in. Can you share some with us?
Yeah, you know, I think like many of us, the pandemic caused the pandemic pause, and it allowed us to sort of really reevaluate what was important in the tourism space. And so for us, I think like many of us know as residents, as tourism had significant impacts in our communities, our natural resources, and other elements of life here in Hawaii. And so one of the things that we turned to a little bit before the pandemic, luckily, but a tool that was really important for us now, and the innovation comes from using a tool like mobile location data, where we use cell phone data from visitors in the state. And we basically geofenced over 700 points of interest, which included all county parks, all state parks, state trails, as well as other points of interest. And that's important because it tells us, one, information about how many people are going to a particular place during a certain amount of time. We get to see the seasonality of when during the year they're going, what time of days are most busy. And a lot of other things like where they're going specifically, say, within that point of interest. And why that's important is we're now using technology to leverage all of that data so that our park managers, our partners at the Department of Land and Natural Resources, the counties, have good data to make good management decisions for the parks, trails, et cetera, that are being impacted by tourism.
Great, thank you for sharing that. And have you know, are there some revelations that have come with this aggressive use of data? More and more I hear now from state departments and agencies of the importance of using data, leveraging data to really help make informed decisions that serve our community.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think HTA for a long time has been a very data-rich organization. We as a destination are unique in some ways that we're not what some people refer to as a drive-to destination. So we have a lot of control in understanding who is coming to the state, because the vast majority of people get here on an airplane, and that ag form that people fill out, we mine that for data, as well as a number of other sources. I think the innovation really has come more during the pandemic about how do we leverage and use that data. And again, for me, it's now how do we start to manage the destination in a way that protects it for future generations? And so Malama Ku'uhome, or caring for our beloved home, is really the emphasis and focus and really whole of HTA effort that we're using to make sure, quite frankly, that tourism is done differently, that it's done in a more regenerative way, and it's data driven.
Great, thank you for that. And you mentioned the ag form. Of course, that brings a smile to my face, because I fill out the ag form, which is a a paper, but any thought of digitizing that ag form? Or I'm going to guess your department has thought about that, but there's probably some challenges related to that. But any insights you can share there?
Yeah, really, I think the ag form is just one piece of a traveler's journey. And I think what we're really starting to look at in terms of innovation is we know that the digital space is changing. We know that we're in this really infant stage of Web3. We know that we're going to shift from Web2 to Web3. We also know that we're going to lose things like cookies and different ways for retargeting and things like that. And so for us as marketers and branding professionals, we have to look at how that landscape is changing and make adjustments. One of the things we'd like to see is how do we build a pipeline from the earliest part of a visitor journey with the inspiration and the branding that we do to educate them about how to be Pono travelers and follow them through that decision-making pathway all the way through getting in the destination where they're going and all the way back out. And so I think technology as an ecosystem, much like the Apple operating ecosystem, we'd like to create something that, for lack of a better term right now, we're calling Smart Destination Hawaii, that would do something similar. And we could use, say, for example, something like LiDAR at a busy hotspot and get real-time visitation data that we could spit out in real time to a visitor so that they could make better choices about where they go and reduce some of that density. So that's a really long way of saying and oversimplifying creating this ecosystem for travelers where we leverage technology to stay in touch, educate, and manage their impacts.
That is cool, and that is exciting. And I think residents in Hawaii would benefit from that too when they travel from one island to another and they want to get to know the place a lot better. And so I'm really excited for the Hawaii Tourism Authority and for us in advancing towards that. And do you, in your work related to that, Kalani, do you interface with other departments or other agencies to share data, to develop a more holistic, I guess, approach or data-rich environment? And I'm wondering if you can speak to, how has that gone? Are there challenges related to that that we could maybe attack moving forward, and also just the revelations that you've gained from that too?
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not perfect, but I think our partnerships with organizations like ETS and Doug Murdoch and his team have been really important for us in making sure that we're aligned with them and really where the state is as a whole. We've been partnering with organizations like HTDC and the Business Support Division within DBED for us as all as attached agencies in making sure that we start to leverage technology and some of the opportunities that exist primarily to support local and small micro businesses in Hawaii. How do we drive some of that visitor spending to local businesses and create that circular economy that we're looking for, but making sure we use technology to do it. So I think there's a lot of opportunity on the horizon for more of that collaboration.
Oh, that's awesome. In this current legislation, there is a bill moving to the legislature for a chief data officer and a data office within ETS right now. And so I'm not sure if you're aware of that, because data is so important. And what would you like to see from a chief data office or a chief data officer that could help the Hawaii Tourism Authority, advance and meet its mission?
I think something like that would, and I'm not too familiar with the proposals, but just kind of on the surface, if there was a central point where all of these inputs were sort of aggregated, and then, I like to say this about data. Sometimes it's really easy to spit out the data, and those are sort of the Legos on the table. But when you start putting those Legos together and build the house and then tell the story about the house is when data becomes powerful and we can leverage the impact. I think something like that sounds like an opportunity to bring that data together from a multitude of sources, build the house, tell the story.
Yeah, thank you. And it definitely is a journey in technology modernization and creating data that is accessible and available to our state leaders and partners to make informed decisions. So I'm don't know where the bill is going to go, but I'm glad that the legislature and the administration is considering something like that. Okay, another question I have for you is, what would you tell or have already told other departments that are trying to develop modernization efforts, dealing with change? The Hawaii Tourism Authority, just being in the spot that you are in our culture and in our society, is just a confluence of all kinds of energy is coming from multiple directions. What advice would you have other departments trying to manage change and trying to develop innovation to move forward?
I'm a branding guy, so I'm going to borrow one of the most powerful global brands, and that's Nike, without permission. So I hope we get a little bit of leeway on this one, but just do it. I think it's important that leaders in our government continue to make these changes. We know that systems change is difficult. We know that it's complex, but I think we have to be committed to making sure that we have the tools and resources that help us create the best and most advantageous outcomes for the state. Quite frankly, that's why we serve in government, is to make sure that we do that.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. And as we look towards the future, Kalani, what's on the horizon for the Hawaii Tourism Authority?
Yeah, I think for me, the one sort of carrot I'd like to dangle is that smart destination Hawaii. How do we start to leverage a very integrated, almost smart city-like approach to destination management? And then I think lastly, how do we start to get data that's closer to real time? I think a lot of data that we've used in prior years tends to be in a delay, like of a month or more, or it's not updated as frequently, but we know that our lives and lifestyles have changed to almost instantaneous everything. And so if our data and the metrics that we're using to guide decision making lag that far, it helps us to be effective. And so where there's possibility for us to get more real-time data and use technology to get that data in a more real-time fashion or closer to, I think we need to continue moving in that direction.
Well, that's definitely exciting. And for the citizens of Hawaii and our business partners, our community partners, how can they advocate and support HTA's efforts towards that? What can they do to support you?
Yeah, I'll be honest, there's a trust deficit with a lot of community members, and that's something we're aware of. And so I think the first thing is to have conversations with community. And it's us just hitting the road and letting people know what we're doing. I don't think we did an effective job of that before. And quite frankly, I think that that's the biggest, the thing I would advocate for is if you're worried about tourism, if you're worried about tourism impacts, and not even necessarily decided on which way it'll go, just come learn more. Because I think there have been a lot of things happening that most people don't know about, and we haven't done a good job sharing. So if you're interested, get on the front lines and join us, get engaged.
Thank you for that, Kalani. And I really do appreciate you sharing that. We all could probably communicate better, including myself and Transform Hawaii Government. And it's conversations like these that help to remind us of the importance of sharing the great work that's going on in Hawaii. So thank you for that. Our time has gone very, very quickly. And so mahalo for your time, Kalani, and mahalo to all of you for watching. Until next time. See you later.
Aloha.
Aloha.